Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Comstock channel. I'm Marlin Bohling with you. Thanks for joining us once again. Be sure to like this video as always and subscribe to it. Click that bell icon down below so we'll notify you when new episodes come out. And share this video with others so we can spread the information that's pretty important in this episode. Now, if you remember yesterday, we were talking with Matthew Kruse, the president of Comstock Investments, and also with Mitchell Hora, the CEO of Continuum Ag. We were talking about why it is so important for farmers to document their carbon intensity score on their farm and maybe how it can translate into some money, a revenue stream for their farm. Well, today in part two, Mitchell, I want to turn to you first here. There's been a lot of talk about carbon in the carbon industry over the years. What makes 2024 so different? What is changing?
You were bringing out a really good point on some of these other carbon things that everyone's explored in the past. Maybe explain the difference between when most farmers are thinking of carbon, they think big red flag, right? And I've been in that space for a long time, and I'm a lot of red flags, but the CI thing is different. And so to explain that, most of these carbon programs that farmers are aware of are in the voluntary market space and the voluntary carbon offset space, where essentially companies, like some of them out of Silicon Valley style of companies, or some of them have been the big multinationals, right? They're coming forward saying, farmers, we will enroll you in our carbon program. Usually it's a multiple year contract, and usually a requirement is you have to change practices. That change of practice triggers something called additionality. It requires new practices in order to participate in these voluntary carbon markets. And that rule is determined by the registries. So the registries are the guys that control the marketplace. They set the rules. And if you want to sell on their marketplace, you have to abide by their rules. So that's why we have additionality. That's why we have permanence and long-term contracts here. And that's also what keeps the prices in check, is that these markets are not just for agriculture. They actually have credits mostly from everything that's non-ag. Only about 1% of global carbon credits actually come from agriculture. So these companies are trying to develop these carbon projects. They have to abide by the registries, and that's where some of these rules come from. And according to Farm Journal Trust and Food, less than 3% of farmers have actually enrolled in one of these carbon programs because of some of these rules and just lack of certainty on what we should be doing. So carbon intensity is, instead of creating a carbon credit and selling it to Microsoft or whoever, now we're keeping that carbon story connected with the bushel, and we're selling a low carbon bushel to produce a low carbon gallon of ethanol. Or like in this case of 45Z, it's a biofuel production tax credit, and you can use low carbon footprint corn to produce low carbon footprint biofuel. But in the future, I'm very bullish on it because I think this is going to impact all the other markets as well, where we're going to see low carbon pork and low carbon milk and low carbon eggs and low carbon everything else because of the precedent that's being set here. And that precedent revolves around the scoring mechanism, like Marlin had asked, the GREET model, where we can actually have some legitimacy and some standards to how we're doing the scoring and defining the carbon footprint. So setting up precedent around the scoring with the GREET model, and setting up some precedent here around the financials because of the impact of these tax credits. There's some serious financial opportunity to be had here. Matt was sharing on his about 50 cents is the opportunity that he's creating based on his CI score. My score of -4 with my local ethanol plant, I'm creating a value of as much as $1.92 a bushel because of the practices that my family's been doing. Again, I don't know what the farmer cut will be, and today we don't even know if that is going to be anything. However, the way that the law is written and the way that everything's coming out, this is coming, and it's coming fast, and we better be ready for it because there's huge opportunity to be had, and it's going to impact a massive amount of farms. Again, in particular, those that are in the biofuel space.
Mitchell, I know I've talked to a lot of producers about similar topics here over the years, and I'm sure you've heard it before. A a lot of farmers out there just have a general skepticism of anything that is regulation oriented, especially when it comes based out of the environmental lobby on Capitol Hill. And it makes them really nervous that if they get involved in something like this, that then whatever practices they try to increase their score, and even if the score doesn't help them anything, then it's like they're locked in, and then it becomes mandatory for them in the future, and they won't have an option to get out of it. How do you answer questions like that from farmers that have this fear of getting locked into something that they don't want long term?
Yeah, it scares the crap out of me. Huge concerns over all that kind of stuff. The problem is this is happening whether we like it or not. And your corn has a CI score whether you like it or not. Today, that score is a default. Usually it's around a 29 or a 30, like I mentioned before, and that's on a county by county base. And that's part of this GREET model developed by the Department of Energy. So you already have a score, whether you like it or not. So the opportunity here is to, if you want to get compensated for what you are doing, you got to prove that your score is better than the
Gentlemen,
default.
I sure
Now,
appreciate
in
both
our
of you taking
approach,
time to
where I
talk
think
with
we
us today.
protect against
Been
some
a
of the
very
potential
informative, very
long-term
educational
issues of
couple
all
of
this stuff,
episodes here, and
all we are
I'm sure we'll
submitting
be spending a lot
to
more
the
time talking
ethanol
about
plant,
everything carbon
and therefore
related.
then
That
all
seems to
they
be
are
the
submitting
buzzword here in
to the
2024.
IRS
So
is just the
thanks
score.
again, Matthew Kruse,
In our
president of
system, the
Comstock
farmer
Investments,
owns their
and
data,
Mitchell Hora, and
meaning
of
the
course he is
farmer
with
owns
Continuum
that
Ag.
data about
And
their management
appreciate you joining us
practices.
once again.
There's
Make
no
sure you share this
financials
video with
included.
others so
All the
we can help
nitty
spread
gritty
the
of those
information.
practices, the farmer
Appreciate
owns.
you being here
They
for this
just put that
episode.
into
For producer
topsoil.
Brianne
It
Hendrickson,
does
I'm
go
Marlin
to the
Bohling.
third
Catch you
party
next time
verifier
on the
upon the
Comstock
farmer's
channel.
request. But the only thing that's passed in the marketplace is the CI score
Yep.
and the verification ID, or the basics of the report that it was legit. So at this point, I don't know that any of the farmer actual practices will need to be passed along. And so, for example, some of those things like how much fertilizer is a farmer using, right? That could be used against them. How much diesel fuel is a farmer using? That could be used against them. How much yield is a farmer actually getting and stuff like, I mean, some of these things we are reporting already to the FSA office or to the crop insurance agent. So plenty of this info is already out there. Plus some of these practices, there's models out there and there's satellite imagery and there's all kinds of ways that that they're already monitoring what we're doing. But I think the opportunity here is to really show, instead of us being that 29 number, which is really not very good, we found our average farmer's at 11, and Matt's, he's a little further north, he's at a 19. Like, we're doing better than what they give us credit for. We can continue to improve, but the actual data doesn't actually have to be shared with these guys and passed along. Now, that's from what we know today, but all they need is, for that load of corn, they just need to know what was the CI score and have the ID, the proof that it's already been verified and that it's legit. So hopefully that helps us to avoid any of the actual farmer data going into the wrong hands and any of it being used against us. But what I anticipate what could be used against us, or where we get the stick rather than the carrot, is if this doesn't get implemented correctly. And if we don't show that we are actually improving from that 29 number, and if farmers don't, participate in these programs, or the ethanol companies drop the ball, that's when I think we get the stick and get backlash way faster than, farmers that are actually looking at changing practices and telling our story.
You just touched on something that probably strikes terror in the heart of many farmers,
Yeah.
and that's 3 letters, IRS.
Yeah.
Would they actually have access to a farmer's carbon score?
No. But that's in our approach, right? So in our approach, the only thing that goes in the marketplace is just what the CI score is, and how that would work then is the ethanol plant. The ethanol plant has to report one number at the end of the year to the IRS. What they ultimately have to report is what is their gallon level CI score. Today, the average gallon of ethanol in this country has a CI score of about 53 to 55. And like we mentioned a couple times here, the default CI score for the bushels is about a 29. So 29 of the 55 comes from the corn. So the ethanol plant needs to replace the 29s with farmer actuals as much as they can. That improves the weighted average score of all their bushels. And at the end of the day, they're reporting one number to the IRS, and that's on a gallon level. Now, we don't know what the IRS is going to want to see from an audit perspective. They're going to have to prove that this was legit, right? If we want tens of millions and hundreds of millions, all the way up to billions of dollars worth of tax credits, we've got to prove that it was legit and that this stuff actually happened. Our approach is that farmer actual data remains the property of the farmer. The only thing that gets passed along to the ethanol plant is the CI score. How they have to report that to the IRS, I haven't seen anything that they're going to have to report it on a farmer by farmer level or anything of that regard. All it would end up being is, here are the bushels that we purchased. Here is the CI score of those bushels. Here's of the total amount, right, the weighted average. And here's the report from our verifier that it's already been through a verification, already been through an audit, and that should suffice the IRS, that we're working with reputable third-party verifiers, and hopefully that keeps them a couple steps removed from what we're actually directly doing here on the farm. But the real answer is we don't know yet. This has never happened before, and we're not going to know for certain until tax season in 2026 is when this is actually getting pushed through.
Matthew, I wanted to ask you from a farmer perspective, in the back of your mind, does it kind of worry you that maybe we're getting on a slippery slope here to where carbon intensity scores like this will be required by the lenders, and that would affect your lending ability to farmers out there, might impact your interest rates moving forward?
I don't know. I guess that's probably a stretch for me, but I think the lenders would want to know if you're making more money and selling your corn at a higher price, and you can show them. Maybe eventually they'll want to see that the CI score, and you can prove to them that look at this, that I'm getting 20, 30, 40 cents more than I would otherwise, or from somebody else if I'm getting that. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, I at this point, it's not really costing me much of anything to do this, to get this information in this carbon. Yeah, I had to pay a few bucks per acre, but other than that, it's I'm not out much at this point. And so I would be for someone that's already doing it. It would, some of these more environmentally friendly programs, like, or whatever word you want to use, using cover crops or doing no-till, it makes more sense. Now, I have family that still does a lot more conventional because they have a feed lot, and they're producing their own feed for cattle, and so they're going to do a lot of corn on corn. And it's a lot harder to, do no-till in those situations. And so it maybe doesn't make as much sense for them. So no, I don't think everyone should just go run and immediately change their cropping strategies, and, because of this information. I think it's kind of a wait and see yet. But I think it makes more sense for people that are already doing some of those things, and why not get paid for it? And, I think for a long time, the problem in agriculture has always been, we want, the consumer wants this, want that, but no one's willing to pay for anything. They always want the farmer to pay for it and take that loss and that risk. Well, finally, there is potential here. It sounds like that they're willing to pay for those production changes. So shouldn't we be more, at least, open to listening to that, I guess, but if they weren't, willing to pay for the cover crop changes, things like that, then I'd be less interested. But I'm more interested if they're willing to pay for it, put it that way.
I understand the risks and stuff, but I don't think we can focus on that. I mean, you could get audited already. If you're a participant in any of the Title I programs, you're subject to an audit. If you're a participant in federal crop insurance, you're already submitting data to the IRS or to the federal government, and you're subject to an audit. We live in this world all the time already. And actually, where I think this hopefully helps us, that today the government believes that our carbon footprint scores are around a 29. And in reality, we found that the average farmer scores an 11, and a lot of farmers doing significantly better than what we're given credit for. So actually, I think some of this stuff proves that what we're doing is actually already pretty good. Actually, hopefully keeps us from getting into major issues with government or environmental groups or otherwise.
Yeah, I read something somewhere where they were saying how it looks like some of the programs could just mean that you just have to document what you're doing. You're already doing it. Not everyone, but if the national CI score is 29, there's a lot of people that are below that, and they're already doing it. So why not get paid for what you're already doing? And those that aren't doing it, they don't have to, but at least they have information they can decide whether it's worth them making any changes to anything. And so that's how I look at it. Is there's a lot of guys out there and gals that are they're already doing some of this stuff, and the government is potentially coming with programs to compensate for those things because they were early adopters of some of these things.
That's a good point. And that's kind of how our approach has been too, is farmers can go and just get their score and see where they are today, and they can toggle practices and see what their score could be if they would like to change. Or not every individual field is going to have the same score, of course, and that's why we've got to get it verified at the field by field level. But if you don't want to participate, you don't have to. But so much of this stuff is already out there. There's a huge carrot here, a huge opportunity. We don't know all the details yet, but I mean, we're talking so much more significant financial opportunity than any other carbon program that I've seen. And it's because it's not necessarily a carbon program. It's just we're creating low carbon intensity biofuel. We can use low carbon intensity corn and soybean bushels to be able to produce that biofuel. And that farmer data is really valuable. So it's about understanding where the opportunity is at, make hay while the sun shines. We'll see what ends up happening to these programs as they progress in the future. But I don't know of a different opportunity more exciting, as at least in this 2024 season and for the couple of growing seasons to come. Big opportunity here to at least educate yourself, at least understand what's going on, and know how to participate if it ends up being the right opportunity for your farming operation.
Well, Mitchell, thank you for helping us dip our toe into some uncharted territory. No one really knows how this is all going to shake out.
No.
But to that end, and again, I want to thank you for sharing all that info with us today. There's just so much ground to cover. You also have an upcoming webinar, right?
Yep. So we do Q&A sessions every single Tuesday morning at 7:45 Central. It's the CI Chit Chat. You can go to continuum.ag is our website, and you can find it under the events tab. So if you have any questions, any follow-up you'd like to pick my brain on, be sure to check us out on the CI Chit Chat. And yeah, we're doing a variety of webinars, but continuum.ag, and I've got hours and hours of content on my YouTube page, Continuum Ag YouTube page, if you'd like any more info. And yeah, happy to help you out. It is still, to your point, Marlon, a lot of unknowns yet, but gosh darn, if this comes through half as good as the way that the law has it proposed, there's a massive opportunity here. And for biofuels and farmers, we need to be collaborating here. We need to get ahead of this. And for other folks in this space too, agronomists, being able to make sure your farmers are ready, elevators, all those bushels you're collecting, they got a CI score. And we're going to need to have all that, there's opportunity to monetize. So be ready, and happy to help as much as we can.
Well, gentlemen, I sure appreciate both of you taking time to talk with us today. Been a very informative, very educational couple of episodes here, and I'm sure we'll be spending a lot more time talking about everything carbon related. That seems to be the buzzword here in 2024. So thanks again, Matthew Kruse, president of Comstock Investments, and Mitchell Hora, and of course he is with Continuum Ag. And appreciate you joining us. Once again, make sure you share this video with others so we can help spread the information. Appreciate you being here for this episode. For producer Brianne Hendrickson, I'm Marlin Bohling. Catch you next time on the Comstock channel. Thanks for joining us on our Comstock YouTube channel. Don't forget you can also find us on Facebook and TikTok as well. Futures trading involves risk. The risk of loss in trading futures and or options is substantial, and each investor and or trader must consider whether this is a suitable investment. Past performance is not indicative of future results.